welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to be doing something that I have never done before. We are taking this John Deere 455, which is currently an all-wheel steer tractor, and we are going to be removing and deleting the rear wheel steering components and converting this tractor to just a normal front wheel steer tractor with a solid rear axle. So when we're done with this, there will be no more rear wheel steering. All right, so the first step in this whole process is, first thing I'm gonna do is remove this whole 3-point and hitch. Up here, you got a snap ring, 3 bolts on each side. That's pretty much all there is to it. The reason I'm doing this is because we're gonna have to drop the rear end down in order to remove the axles or the axle housings on the outside. So first step, take off the 3-point hitch. I took out these bushings with a snap ring. That's what it looks like right here. A little snap ring and a bushing. Just one on each side. Then you're also going to have this linkage that's bolted down here to your middle bolt on your hitch. Have to take that out. And then your rear cylinder is right here. There's a pin through it with a little clip holding it in place. Pull the clip out, and then this top 3-point assembly should be free. So now that I got the cylinder pin out, I'm going to take the pins out for the bottom main 3-point arms and detach both of them and just pull them out. And then once they're out, I will continue to unbolt the main hitch bracket and take that off. All right, we got the hitch off, all unbolted, laying on the floor. Now the next thing is we're gonna maneuver this part out, and we got it off. So this here is your 3-point cylinder that lifts it up. So the way you have to get this off, this whole piece, your cylinder connects to this here, and basically in order to get this off, you basically just have to lift or twist up on it so that this part drops below the cylinder rod. Once it drops down past that, you're able to slide it, the whole system, over against the frame. This other side will pop out, and then you just twist it down out of there. So the next step we're going to do is probably the easiest thing, and that's going to be remove the wheels. All right, folks, we got the rear wheels off, and I believe the next thing I'm going to do is just disconnect this linkage here. It goes to a point down under the differential there, and the reason I'm doing that is because at some point we need to unbolt this part of the axle, and then once we do that, we can lower the differential, and we're going to have to remove all of this and unbolt it from the main housing of the differential, because this is what we are replacing. I actually have the parts right here. This is what's going to take this tractor from 4-wheel steer to just a solid rear axle non-steering. So yeah, there's one on each side. Just gonna undo this, take it off, and then once I do that, I'm gonna see if I can remove everything that's under there. I will get you a closer shot of that once I'm there. Going down under for the next step. Right here's the linkages to the steering knuckle that we just removed. I believe the next thing I'm going to do is remove this nut which holds this linkage There's so many linkages under here, it's ridiculous. But to remove this whole framework under here, there's 2 bolts on each side. Here's one, back there's one. They bolt right to this axle tube. There's 2 more on the other side. But before we can remove that, this linkage comes up here to this arm. We have to undo it in order for this to come off. All right, it's off. It's only held on by 4 bolts. It's like a spindle for all the steering components, and then it's all off the rear differential. On to the next step. Right, the next thing we need to do, there's 3 bolts right here with nuts on the back side. Basically, there's another, I'm just gonna call it a spindle, bolted to the frame. So your rear steering linkage is hooked to this, and then this linkage runs up front. But there's like a spindle up in here that moves. It's got a bearing in it and everything, so I have to undo that. You can kind of see it up in there. We're gonna have to wiggle it out of there somehow, but that's the next step. All right, so I got those 3 bolts out, which was very easy. Didn't even need a wrench on the back side. But now, in order to get them to slide out, I believe I'm gonna have to remove this golden rod. There's a pin in at the bottom, which I'm gonna remove first and see if I can get it out like that. Or there's also a pin up top. I might just have to remove the whole thing in order for this spindle to slide out because it's hitting it. All right, I'm still having trouble getting this spindle off this frame, so I believe I'm gonna have to take off the linkage running to the front. So I'm gonna spin that off and keep trying. Got it out. Sits up against the frame like that. The reason I had so much trouble getting it out is because this tractor has the drive shaft for a snowblower running up front. So I just pulled it front some, couple inches, and then this was able to pop right out. So on to the next step. All right, for this next step, we are moving up front. Got this linkage that connects to the spindle in the rear, which was right there. That linkage runs all the way up front to another spindle. You can see it in there, and we've got 4 bolts in the frame holding it in. So we're gonna have to get that one out too. I'm gonna start by, see if we can show you here. Basically, this comes from the rear into this framework connected to the spindle. Then we have another linkage that runs from this framework on the spindle over here and ties into where the front steering is. I'm just gonna remove that linkage on the front steering. Get that off. Then I'm going to attempt to removing the bolts holding this spindle in and seeing if it drops out of there. All right, the bolts are out. Now we need to figure out how hard is it to get this off. It's that hard. They come out pretty easy. So 4 bolts. That's the last of the linkage system there. All right, we are in the back of the tractor again. The next step is going to be draining out the oil in the transaxle. And the reason we're doing that is because once we drop it down and unbolt these rear axle tubes and axle shafts, if we don't drain the oil, it's all going to leak all over the floor. So, going to drain the oil. After that, we are going to unbolt the axle tubes. There's 2 bolts on each side. Before we can unbolt them though, we need to put a jack under the transaxle to hold it in place. I'm going to be using a floor jack. Put a little bit of pressure on it, undo your bolts, and then slowly drop it down. Got it, the rear end unbolted, and we got it dropped down far enough that we can see all the bolts that hold on this rear axle tube. So now we're just going to unbolt each side. All right, I just got all the bolts out for this here axle, and I'm going to see if I can pull it out here with one hand. I might have to drop the camera. It's coming. There we go. It's all out. That's all it is. I'm gonna clean that up a little bit just to get some of the junk out of the way. Then I'll get the straight axle tubes and axle housings and bolt up and do the other side. All right, we got the axle housing pieces here. The ones that are going on this tractor to make it a non-steering rear end. Basically what I'm doing here is taking off all this old gasket maker. They don't make an actual gasket for this. So once I get all this off, I'm gonna get some new gasket maker. Should probably clean this surface up with some brake clean just to get the oil off. But then put a new coat of gasket maker on it, a really thin coat. Got a real thin coat of gasket maker all the way around. And gonna let it dry, and once it's dry we will put them on. See if I can do it with one hand. Pull this hose up out of the way. It has centering pins on it. It's kind of anyhow, that's about how it goes in. I'm gonna show you. This is the left side. That's how it's gonna be now. And this is what it was. Though the ones for the four-wheel steering are actually longer, but then the wheels are different. So when you convert it, you actually have to get normal wheels. It's kind of hard to see with that jack, but no four-wheel steer, four-wheel steer. We are soon done. All right, I ran into my first problem. The bolts for the four-wheel steer axles are longer, at least the three on the bottom. They're at least a ½ inch too long. Because the flange on the four-wheel drive axle tubes is much thicker on the bottom for some reason, and so something on the two-wheel steer axle housings, they're all the same size bolts. So if you ever do this, you have to make sure you get 3 shorter bolts for each side, and then you'll be back in business. So I'm gonna have to get the shorter bolts before I get this all bolted up. All right, got the proper bolts. These were the ones for the four-wheel steer axles. This is just a regular axle, it's shorter, so I'm gonna get them put in, and then this side should be done. Starting the right side, honestly it's the same as the left. Just a few, like 6 bolts. Put a pan under there, get a little fluid out. Make sure your mating surfaces are all clean. And we're gonna pop it off and put the other one on, the other axle on. All right, in case anybody was wondering, that is the part number for the smaller bolts that we had to get for the bottom of those axle housing tubes that bolt on the differential. That's John Deere's part number. All right, so now, since we got both of the rear axle housings put on, this thing is no more rear wheel steer. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to set it up in place.
Slowly and gently lift it up. Almost there. I'm not going to put it quite all the way up. As you can see, it needs to adjust a little bit. So I'm just going to pull on it. Try to get the bolt holes lined up. Oh, yeah, that's really close. There we go. Now I'm going to grab my bolts. I'm going to try to at least get them started. That goes in. And I have to wiggle this rear end around a little bit. I think I need a cameraman. Alright, we're going to go to the other side. Get these started. Right there. Now we got it started. I'm just going to lift up some more. Okay, that one in.
And you might have to make sure the cylinder is free. Make sure nothing's binding up, but it should lift right up in place. You can start tightening your bolts. It'll suck it up in there. So I'm gonna finish that up and then I'll be back. Everything's all buttoned up there. It's all tight. No more jack holding it up. So the only thing left to do is we have to take the tires off of these rims. Basically the difference is these would have been on the tractor like this. You can see how far out this is. This isn't going to work. These are the wheels that are going on it, and you can see there's like 6 inches from the bolting surface out to the edge. So next thing we have to do is take off these tires, mount them on the other rims, and put the 3-point hitch back on. All right, gonna try to show you how this goes on.
Like that. Grab your bushings. There's a flat side right there. Goes towards the top. Same with the other side. And then put your steppers on. There we go. Easy as that. There's the hitch. This is for the 3-point cylinder. And that's that. Pretty simple.
All right, everybody, we got the wheels and tires put on it. Our 3-point hitch is all installed the way it's supposed to be. Even took it for a test drive, and everything is working good. It's no longer all-wheel steer, so maybe we should take those stickers off, but I believe this project has come to a close. So let me know what you think. Is this something you would do to your tractor? This customer wanted it done, so we did it. Works great. I'm happy with how it turned out, so I believe that's all for this video.